All right, back for another beer review, and today I'll be reviewing yet another beer from the Surly Brewing Company, and they're out of both Minneapolis and Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, and this is their Double Furious, and this is the 2023 release. So they're calling this one a Furious Whiskey Barrel-Aged IPA, and on the side here it says Double IPA aged in Furious Whiskey Barrels. It comes in at 13.6% alcohol by volume. No IBUs listed. Time of review. This can is just over 2.5 months old. So very interesting beer, or so it seems. So they take their regular Furious, which is like an old school American IPA, they imperialize it, and then they age it in Furious Whiskey Barrels, which is a whiskey that Surly partnered with a distillery. I forget the name of the distillery, but they did a Furious whiskey. So they're taking an imperial version of Furious, putting it in Furious whiskey barrels, and here we are. So when it comes to like barrel-aged IPAs, imperial IPAs, they're always strange to me. Sometimes it can work, sometimes it doesn't. We will see what is up with this one, though. I'm very curious, and this is kind of in preparation for me drinking and reviewing the Utopias barrel-aged 120-minute from Dogfish Head. I'm curious to see how that one is. This is like, you know, a little bit less in ABV, but kind of in the same vein. So yeah, so I figured it would have this deep, dark look, because Furious, honestly, it's an old school American IPA, but it kind of drinks like a hop forward amber ale to me. So this being, you know, in an whiskey barrel kind of makes sense. And I'm expecting it because it was aged in the barrels. I don't know how long, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, I don't know. You're going to get those like older IPA characteristics, at least the ones that I do, which is like orange marmalade on white bread and whatnot. So yeah, that looks beautiful. It has this beautiful amber, almost deep mahogany color. Can't really see through it. Has a finger of this super creamy, just picture perfect tan colored head. It just looks beautiful. Hold it up to the light. Now there is some light getting through the bottom, but the rest of it you can't really see. There are alcohol sheets as opposed to legs, because they're just like dripping down the sides, like they're just sticking. It's fucking coating the glass. It's ridiculous. Anyway, let's get a nose. Oh, that smells awesome. Huge, rich whiskey, and I'm talking there's, you know, a decent amount of like vanilla in the nose, but it has big like caramel, toffee, burnt sugar notes. Could be from the base beer as well. Oh yeah. Very rich on like the burnt sugars, the caramelized sugars. A little bit of like a citrus note, like an orange. Ooh. Picture an orange slice with like a little bit of a caramel or toffee. I'd say more of like a caramel drizzle on top. I'm trying to, there's something specifically, maybe like a very faint, like 70 or 80% cacao bar kind of nose, like a little bit of like a really deep chocolate, but not like sweet smelling. There's a perceived fruitiness as well, like dark fruits, like maybe a dark cherry, maybe a plum. Wow. So does it smell like an imperial IPA that's been aged in whiskey barrels? Not exactly, and I don't think I'd say that if I was doing it blind, but I'm getting like a little bit of hints, like the orange, the citrus, I feel coming from the base IPA, right? I feel like that's something that's coming from that. I also think the caramel and the toffee is also, you know, from the base beer, like the caramelized burnt sugars. Oh, it's a little bit of like an oaky sensation too. Like vanillins are here, but the oak is like, I feel like I'm going to have the oak tannin dryness, which I'm not a huge fan of, depending on the beer, but we'll see. Now, this wasn't my, it's super hot outside. Like today it was like 90. Even though I'm here, you know, reviewing it in my room here, where it's typically in like the, you know, low to mid 60s. This one was out of my darker beer fridge at 54 degrees, and it's sweating a little bit. So shout out to you, Paul, over at PA New Brews. PA New Brews, a Brew News. Anyway, let's get into it. Cheers, everyone. I like it. But you can tell it's an imperial IPA, and I don't know how much I like that finish, because something's happening on the finish that's stopping me from loving this. I like it. That first sip was nice, but as it sits here and lingers, the finish, something's going on. Let's get another sip. 13.6% is definitely a little thin. I would have assumed it would be. This is like higher side of medium, lower side of full. Probably more lower side of full. Something's almost 14%. Definitely want it thicker. I want it almost chewy, right? It's almost 14%. The mouthfeel, on the other hand, it's really nice. It has a decent carbonation to it. Like moderately carbonated, but it is really smooth on the palate. And there is like a slight creaminess going on. So body's disappointing. Mouthfeel, nice. The taste, I love the first 3/4 of the palate. The first 75% of the palate is exactly what I was hoping for out of this beer. There's just a lot of complex malt character mixing in with some nice hop character. The finish is what is kind of stopping this one from getting to the next level for me. Let's go into the taste. Tip of the tongue, there's almost like a toasted kind of bread quality into caramel, toffee, burnt sugars, brown sugars, even a touch of molasses. All hits me at the tip of the tongue. As it continues on, the citrus comes in, and I think the citrus is coming from the hops. It has like this nice zesty, almost slightly juicy, like orange and tangerine character. Right after that, there's a little bit of, again, the darker stone fruits, like a sweet dark cherry and maybe like a plum. Midway through the palate is where this beer starts to change a little bit. The barrel comes in and it has the vanillins, right? It's the vanilla, it's the oak. There's a little bit of like a peppery kind of whiskey note. And that's really nice. But as the beer, did I not clean it up from the other day? Yeah. As it comes through, midway through the palate and that barrel hits, start to change. But what starts happening is the beer starts to turn into more of an IPA, which is fine. I'm starting to get this like earthy, resinous, almost piney hop character on the back of the palate. And it starts to finish. And then what happens is the bitterness starts to ramp up. Fine by me. Gets into like the low moderate range as far as bitterness goes. So all that sweet, malty character at the front of the palate starting to be kind of balanced out by the hop character, especially the bitterness. But then it starts to dry out immensely. And what happens is the dryness is the oak tannin or perceived oak tannin dryness. So on the back of the palate, I'm left with this resinous, kind of piney, earthy, moderate, almost moderate bitterness with a full-on dryness. And the full-on dryness isn't just a regular dryness, it's that oak tannin, almost like you had a wooden stick that you had a popsicle on, and you're just sucking on it, and that's the flavor you're getting on the finish. It makes it, for me, the finish unbalanced to some degree, because it just washes away all that malty goodness, and I have this lingering finish of a super dry oak tannin presence with also a moderate bitterness, and it's mixing in with that like resinous pine and earthiness, and it's just not working like I would hope it would work if that happens. I prefer that not to happen. Like I don't need it to be super dry oak tannins and like, moderately bitter with like a resinous pine earthy finish. I don't want all of that. One or two of those, sure. All of that, a little bit too much for me. If that finish didn't hit me, this is easily high 4, low 4.25 range all day for me. Like it's pretty fucking good, especially the first half of the palate's phenomenal. I like the mouthfeel. And another reason why I'd probably give this like a 4.25 easily, if not for that finish. The 13.6%, is it boozy? No. Do I feel it in my chest and a warming in general? Yes. But on the palate, there's no astringency. There's no feeling of the booze. And that's wild. Until it like hits your chest into your stomach. I don't know this is 14%. I would guess probably 10 to 11 if I was doing this blind. That's how that's how well it hides the alcohol. For me though, unfortunately, that finish just kind of, I want to say it ruins it because it doesn't. I'm still going to drink the rest of that. Like it's still a drinkable, enjoyable beer. And every time I go back for a sip, it, washes away that finish. And then it, after like 5 to 10 seconds, the finish is back. So there's parts of this beer that I love and there's parts of this beer that I do not like. As a whole though, I'm going to give it a fair score. Like I said, I'd give this, without that finish, this easily gets a 4.25, maybe like a 4.3. I got to knock it down quite a bit though. So Double Furious, the 2023 release from Surly, only because of the finish. It's the only thing stopping it from getting like a mid to high 4.25. I'm going to give this a low 4 out of 5 and go 3.9 out of 5. That's the best I can do on this one. That finish knocks off basically a third of a point. It's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, you got to be honest. And as much as I want to love this beer, as much as I think I could love this beer, the finish is too much of things that I don't think intertwine to my liking. Like if it was just the oak tan and dryness, I still think this gets like a high 4, low 4.25. If it's just that earthy, resinous, pine, moderate bitterness, this probably gets a low 4.25 into a 4.25. The fact that both of them hit, can't do it. Price point availability, this, I paid $6.99 for that can. You're talking 13.6% Imperial IPA aged in whiskey barrels. $6.99 is a great price point. And some may argue like, wow, it's $7 a can. People pay more for heavily fruited sours at 5%. If this was in a 500 milliliter bottle, no one would think twice. $6.99, be like, oh, it's a great deal. It's in a can. There's a little bit of prejudice against cans, I think, especially when it comes to styles like this. You just don't, some people don't think they're going to have the quality that maybe if this was in a 22 fluid ounce bomber or like a 500 milliliter bottle. But no, I think the price point is great. And availability, I have no idea with Surly. We see their stuff occasionally here in West New York. We got their stuff like 2 or 3 years ago. I think we got their stuff like, was it pre-pandemic and then post-pandemic? We didn't get anything, and then all of a sudden, last 6 months, stuff has showed up. So I don't know. If you get Surly in your neck of the woods, post in the comment section. If you've had this one before, whether it's this year's release or prior releases, what did you think about this one? Because for me, I'm kind of bummed out. This had a lot of potential that was ruined by the finish, and it's very rare that a finish, like, I don't say ruins, again, I shouldn't use the word ruins, but it kind of, it does, you know what? It does ruin the beer slightly. Not completely, slightly. And it's very rare for a finish to do that for me. This is one of those rare times where, like, without the finish, this beer's fucking pretty damn good. And with it, just pretty solid. So anyway, appreciate everybody stopping by for another beer review here on the Beer Patrol. I got my work cut out for me as far as the Dogfish Head Utopias Barrel Aged 120 minute. I hope it's better than this. Till the next one. Cheers.